Hi, thanks for joining me. My name is Mindy Mandell, and today I'm going to continue the series of talks on Plato's Republic. So we're into Book 8 and we're looking at the different constitutions. As I mentioned last week, these constitutions on the surface are about political systems, and if someone wanted to make the case that that is the focus of this book, there's certainly quite a bit of material to defend that. However, the way I'm going to approach this and the way I think that Plato intended it to be approached is to recognize that this is part of that ongoing analogy of the city-state to the soul. And so what we want to really look at is what he's saying about the soul. Now, he gave us one healthy state of soul, which he's calling aristocracy, and then four unhealthy states. Now, I talked about last week that back earlier in the book, Socrates mentioned that there are an infinite number of actual constitutions since everybody is unique. But he's giving us these four basic models that he's calling democracy, oligarchy, democracy, and tyranny. And there's a reason that he chose the number 4 and why he's arranging it the way he does. And we're going to see that play out as we go on. So last week I talked about democracy, which means like the rule or the power of honor. Again, I'm not aware of any actual form of government called democracy, but this is focusing on that honor-loving part of the soul. Today we're going to go on to oligarchy, which we're going to see he's marking as the love of money. Now, to better understand how he's organizing this, I want to just quickly review the tripartite soul. It'll help us make sense of what's going on here. And this was back in book 4. And remember, Plato has us jumping all over the place. We're going to be jumping all through the book. But this is from book 4. There are 3 parts of the soul. The Greek names are logos, thumos, and epithumia. So the logos is the reasoning part of the soul. The thumos, the high-spirited part, and the epithumia is the appetitive or desiring part. And then we can connect these with the different virtues. And so the reasoning part of the soul is most closely associated with wisdom. The high-spirited part is bravery or courage, although we saw in the timocratic nature that another aspect that awakens is that love of honor. And then temperance, or in some translations soberness, is associated with the desiring part of the soul. Justice then is that proper order and balance among the 3 parts. So that was a quick review of the 4 virtues, and also we're looking here at the 3 parts of the soul. And then remember, in our analogy, he called the reasoning part of the soul, the home of wisdom, the counselors and the guardians. And we saw them slip a little. That was the first slip from aristocracy to democracy. Was the counselors, there was still, the reasoning part of the soul is still guiding the soul. And so the counselor function is still there, although the person may have gotten a bit lazy. Remember, he described that as having unseasonable births, having insights out of season, so to speak. And then, but it was the guardian role really that slipped, because in addition to guiding the soul, the reasoning part of the soul also should be the guardian. We need to watch our state of mind, and we need to keep our energy strong. I talked about that quite a bit last week, so we're going to move on now. But what we saw was that because of that slip, this part awoke in a way that resulted in the person being valuing honor and image quite strongly. So ideally, in the perfectly just soul, in the healthy, wise soul, the thumos is acting as like a soldier in a sense. That was what it was represented of this part of the soul in the healthy city-state. This is the part of the soul that defends wisdom, that keeps us focused on wisdom. It doesn't let pleasures or pains divert our attention. And then we saw the appetitive part, the part that loves money and all the things that money can buy. and the various pleasures in life. That's ideally the home of temperance, because in a healthy soul we will naturally desire what is healthy and good for the soul. What we saw last week at the end of the talk on the timocratic soul is that while this person is a lover of honor, towards the end of their life they start to develop a love of money. And that's where we pick up today, and we're going to carry on from that to see how that can more fully develop into what Socrates is calling here the oligarchic nature. And all of our translations, just point out again, are from Paul Shorey. All right, so Socrates says that as time goes on and the timocratic person advance in the pursuit of wealth, the more they hold that in honor, the less they honor virtue. May not the opposition of wealth and virtue be conceived as if each lay in the scale of a balance, inclining opposite ways? Yes, indeed. So when wealth is honored in a state and the wealthy, virtue and the good are less honored, obviously. Okay, so that's the principle that Socrates is drawing on now, saying that wealth and virtue are sort of in opposition of one another. And that which men at any time honor, they practice, and what is not honored is neglected. There's another principle, a general rule that he's following, that we practice what we honor. It is so, Animonta says. Thus, finally, from being lovers of victory and lovers of honor, they become lovers of gain-getting and of money, and they commend and admire the rich man and put him in office, but despise the man who is poor. Quite so. So now the desire-loving part of the soul has awakened. And Socrates says that such a city should of necessity be not one, but two, a city of the rich and a city of the poor, dwelling together and always plotting against one another. So again, we can apply this on the macro level, looking at the world, seeing different nations, and we can certainly see the tale of two cities playing out in many countries around the world. However, what we want to do for our purposes is to always plug in the idea of the soul wherever you see city, because that's the analogy. So now we're talking about a soul of the rich and of the poor. And so we have to ask ourselves what that means. Well, the only currency that's of any use and of any value to the soul is wisdom. And so what we're looking at here is a soul that contains both wisdom and ignorance. And the two are dwelling together and always plotting against one another. And what of the trait we found fault with long ago? The fact that in such a state, the citizens are busybodies and jacks of all trades, farmers, financiers, and soldiers all in one. Do you think that is right? Oh, by no manner of means. Now, this idea was introduced very early in the dialogue, and remember that it tied in with the whole idea of justice, that there's the tripartite soul and each part should be doing its own proper function. Well, in this state where the desires have been awakened and they're now challenging the counselor role of wisdom, well, now you don't have that state of justice. And so there's a fight going on. This is, again, the tale of two cities. We got two different souls going on. The wise and the ignorant, they're plotting against each other. They're fighting against each other. So first there was a slip in wisdom, and now there's a slip in justice. That's the second step. Consider now whether this polity is not the first that admits that which is the greatest of all such evils. What? The allowing a man to sell all his possessions, which another permitted to acquire, and after selling them, to go on living in the city, but is no part of it, neither a money maker, nor a craftsman, nor a knight, nor a foot soldier, but classified only as a pauper and a dependent. And Adimantus agrees that this is the first. So there is a change we see. We're not quite clear yet from this wording what exactly is going on, but we can see that there is a change, that this is the first that of the five that admits of this change. And so we want to take a look at what it is. There certainly is no prohibition of that sort of thing in oligarchic states. Otherwise, some of their citizens would not be excessively rich and others out and out paupers. Right. But observe this. When such a fellow was spending his wealth, was he then of any more use to the state in the matters of which we were speaking? Or did he merely seem to belong to the ruling class, while in reality he was neither ruler nor helper in the state, but only a consumer of goods? It is so. He only seemed, but was just a spendthrift. So again, justice has slipped. It may not yet be clear exactly what Socrates is pointing to here as far as the actual layout of this person's soul, the actual constitution, but we want to keep all of this in mind as we go on. Shall we then say of him that as the drone bee springs up in the cell, a pest of the hive, so such a man grows up in his home, a pest of the state? By all means, Socrates. And has not God, Adimantus, left the drones which have wings and fly stingless one and all, while of the drones here who travel afoot, he has made some stingless, but has armed others with terrible stings? And from the stingless finally issue beggars and old age, but from those furnished with stings, all that are denominated malefactors. Okay, so we've got some new imagery to work with here, some very strange imagery. We've got three kinds of drone bees going on here. First, he tells us that there are some that God left, which have wings. Now, remember, we're jumping all over this dialogue. We're going to go back to Book 2, where Socrates introduced the laws. And one of the laws was that God is good in reality, the cause of good things, but not all things. So if this first set of drones, this first category of drones, have wings and they're left by God, that tells us that God is in some way the direct or close cause of these drones, whatever they are. We don't yet know what the drones are. But these are in some way good. On the other hand, there are drones that are here who travel afoot. Remember, God is the cause of good things, but not all things. God is not the cause of ignorance. And so here in our mundane world, we have some drones, whatever they are, that travel afoot, that are not directly caused by God. And these drones, there are two categories. Some are stingless, which sounds like they're painless, and some have terrible stings, which sound like they're harmful. So we have three categories: the winged drones, wingless drones without stings, and wingless drones with stings. Now, he doesn't yet fully flesh out what he's talking about here. These drones are kind of working in the background for the oligarchic nature. However, from next week, when we get into the democratic nature, we're going to see the drones come front and center. And so the drones are going to be talked about more with the democratic and the tyrannical natures. Excuse me. So we want to hold these in the back of our minds, and we're going to come back to them, but we want to keep thinking about what they might represent. And you will be able to kind of fine-tune your understanding as we go on. All right, Socrates asks, shall we not say that the presence of such citizens is the result of a defective culture? Defective culture, remember, refers to the idea of music and gymnastics, as I talked about last week, watching our states of mind, keeping our energy strong. So a result of a defective culture and bad breeding, having births out of season, and a wrong constitution. Now justice has failed us, so we have the wrong constitution, the wrong ordering of the states. And Adimantus agrees, we shall. Shall we not say that owing to this lack of culture, the appetites of the drones, appetites referring to the appetitive part of the soul, so we're getting some clue of what the drones are. And owing to this lack of culture, the appetites of the drones spring up in him. Some of the beggarly, others the rascally, but that they're forcibly restrained by his general self-surveillance and self-control. We shall indeed. And is it not apparent by this that in other dealings, where he enjoys the repute of a seeming just man, he by some better element in himself forcibly keeps down other evil or unhealthy desires dwelling within, not persuading them that it is better not, nor taming them by reason, but by compulsion and fear, trembling for his possessions generally? Quite so. Yes, by Zeus, my friend, in most of them, when there is occasion to spend the money of others, you will discover the existence of drone-like appetites, most emphatically. Such a man, then, would not be free from internal dissension. He would not be really one, but in some sort of a double man. Yet for the most part, his better desires would have the upper hand over the worse. It is so. And for this reason, I presume, such a man would be more seemly, more respectable than many others. But the true virtue of a soul in unison and harmony with itself would escape him and dwell afar. So the image that I think you can probably get from this is, imagine, like in movies or actually even watching the news, people who are seen as highly respectable in their fields, whether it's business or politics or science or whatever. Maybe they have a shady double life. And that's what we're seeing here. The person who fits that image of temperance that is as it's commonly understood. The person who has these dual desires, the healthy and the unhealthy, but they force down the unhealthy ones. They're still guided by reason. At this point, it may have weakened. They may still have some image of truth and reality that they're following, but they also may have an image of what is socially acceptable. And that is what's guiding them. But the reasoning part is still guiding them to some degree. But they have this sort of battle going on. However, the key line here is this one at the end here: the true virtue of a soul in unison and a harmony with itself. This is what temperance really is in its proper understanding. It's not when you are in battle with your desires. It's when you have that unison and harmony in the soul such that you just naturally desire what is healthy. What a friend of mine likes to call choiceless choices. It's just, you know what is best for you. It's what is healthy for you. You're not even tempted by what is unhealthy. That's the way Socrates is presented throughout the dialogues. That's the way Plato is presenting the temperance at its best, the best version of it. And so the person with the oligarchic soul, wisdom has slipped to some degree, and then justice has slipped. They no longer have that proper balance in the soul. And now we see that temperance is slipping. And that's going to lead us into the democratic soul, where temperance completely falls apart. And so we're going to pick that up next week. I do hope you'll join me. If you have any questions or any comments about anything going on here, please drop me an email or leave a comment below. There is an email address in the description box. Also, I'd always appreciate a thumbs up, and if you don't already subscribe, I do hope you'll think about it. You'll get notifications whenever I put out a new video. So thank you very much, and I hope you'll join me next week.